Imagine it's 218 BC. Rome is on top of the world, a rising superpower flexing its muscles across the Mediterranean. Their biggest rival, Carthage, has just been brought to its knees, humiliated in the First Punic War. But in the ashes of that defeat, a fire is smoldering. A 29-year-old general, his heart burning with a promise made as a child, swears a sacred oath. An oath on an altar supposedly soaked in blood, to make Rome pay, to make them bleed forever. This man is Hannibal Barca, and what he's about to do isn't just a military campaign. It's the most insane, audacious, and legendary gamble in the history of warfare. Everyone in the ancient world knew one thing for certain. The Alps were impassable for an army, a jagged, frozen wall of rock and ice separating Gaul from Italy, a natural fortress that protected Rome's northern border. To even suggest marching an army through them was suicide. To suggest marching one through with 37 war elephants, that was the talk of a madman. But Hannibal wasn't just any man. He was a genius forged in hatred for Rome, and he saw what no one else did. The direct path to victory wasn't by sea, where Rome's navy now ruled. It was through the impossible. So, he set out from Spain, 50,000 infantry, 9,000 cavalry, and his secret weapon, a column of 37 towering war elephants. His army was a hardened, multicultural force of mercenaries, fierce Iberians, nimble Numidians, and rugged Celts, all united by their loyalty to him. Their first obstacle wasn't even the mountains, but the Rhone River. The Romans were waiting, confident Hannibal couldn't cross. So Hannibal sent a detachment on a secret night march, crossed upstream, and smashed the Roman allied forces from behind. He built massive rafts, some over 100 feet long, covered them in earth and turf to trick the elephants into thinking they were walking on solid ground, and ferried his living tanks across the raging river. The first test was passed. Rome was already underestimating him. That was just how he liked it. As they reached the foothills of the Alps, the real nightmare began. The journey was supposed to be a secret, but the mountain tribes saw them coming. They weren't soldiers in a neat formation. They were wolves of the highlands, and they smelled treasure. For 9 brutal days, Hannibal's column was under constant attack. These tribes, like the Allobroges, would wait on the high ground, then send a terrifying avalanche of boulders and rocks, crashing down onto the narrow path below. Men, horses, and baggage animals were swept off the cliffs, their screams swallowed by the abyss. The path was so tight that a single panicking horse could send a dozen men tumbling to their deaths. Hannibal had to think on his feet, constantly. One night, a local tribe held a strategic pass, planning to ambush his army in the morning. But Hannibal noticed they abandoned their posts at nightfall, believing the Carthaginians wouldn't dare move in the dark. He took a small elite force, and, under the cloak of darkness, seized the high ground they had just left. When morning came, the ambushers found themselves ambushed. Hannibal had outthought them, but the cost was still immense. The army was bleeding men and supplies with every step they took. Then came the cold. As they climbed higher, the air grew thin, and the world turned white. They were marching at nearly 3,000 meters, almost 10,000 feet. A blizzard descended upon them, a blinding wall of snow with zero visibility. They were walking blind. The path, already treacherous, vanished completely. Men who strayed even a few feet from the column were lost forever, swallowed by snowdrifts, or falling into hidden crevasses. The wind was a razor, cutting through their thin tunics. They were men of North Africa and Spain, built for the sun, not this frozen hell. Food ran out. They ate their pack animals. Then, they ate the rotting carcasses of animals that had already died. Desperation set in. The new snow-covered old, icy patches, turning the ground into a death trap. Horses would lose their footing and slide, taking their riders with them. The elephants, terrified and unused to the ice, struggled immensely. Their immense weight would break through the crust of snow, and they would become trapped, unable to move. Getting them back up was a monumental effort. Through it all, Hannibal was the unwavering heart of the army. He marched with his men, he shared their suffering, and he never showed a hint of doubt. Legend says that during the worst of the cold, when his men were freezing to death, he ordered the bodies of the dead to be used as fuel for fires, just to provide a moment of warmth for the living. He contracted a severe eye infection, likely ophthalmia, from the relentless wind and snow. The infection raged, and without proper medicine, he lost sight in his right eye. He was now a one-eyed general, leading a half-frozen army through a living nightmare. And still, they say, he smiled. His will was unbreakable. After 9 days of climbing and fighting, they reached the summit. Hannibal stood before his skeletal army, the survivors who had endured this frozen hell. Below them, stretching out to the horizon, was the green, sun-kissed plains of Italy. He pointed toward the Po Valley. "My friends," he declared, "you are now scaling the walls, not just of Italy, but of Rome itself." He promised them rest, riches, and revenge. He breathed life back into their broken bodies with the sheer power of his conviction. The worst was over, he told them, but the descent was a new kind of horror. The path down the Italian side was even steeper and icier. It was a controlled fall, more than a march. A landslide had wiped out a section of the path, leaving a sheer 300-meter drop. The army was trapped. For 3 days, they were stuck on the mountainside, the men starving, the animals dying. Was this the end? Had they come all this way just to perish on the doorstep of their enemy? No. Hannibal ordered his engineers to work. They cut a new path into the side of the mountain. The legend, perhaps embellished by Roman historians, says they heated the rock with giant bonfires, then doused it with sour wine. The sudden change in temperature would crack the stone, allowing his men to chisel it away, foot by painful foot. For 3 days they toiled, and finally, they carved a new road from the face of the cliff, wide enough for the last of his men, horses, and even the surviving elephants to pass. 15 days. That's how long it took to cross the Alps. 15 days that felt like a lifetime. When Hannibal finally tallied his losses on the plains of Italy, the numbers were staggering. He had started with 50,000 infantry. Now he had 20,000. He'd had 9,000 cavalry. 6,000 remained. Of his 37 elephants, only a few survived the descent. In total, 33,000 lives were lost. Half his army was gone, swallowed by the mountains. It was a catastrophic price to pay, but it was worth it, because when the news reached Rome that Hannibal Barca was in Italy, with war elephants, having crossed the Alps, it caused pure, unadulterated panic. It was impossible. Senators were said to have lost control of their bladders in the Forum. The natural fortress they had trusted for centuries had been breached. The boogeyman was at their door. This shockwave of fear was exactly what Hannibal had wanted. He had bypassed Rome's legions, ignored their navy, and appeared where no one believed a man could. He had achieved complete strategic surprise, and now the real war would begin. The battles that followed Trebia Lake, Trasimene, and the legendary Cannae would become textbook examples of military genius. Hannibal would annihilate Roman army after Roman army, inflicting hundreds of thousands of casualties. He brought the Republic to the very brink of collapse, a nightmare that would haunt Roman memory for 1,000 years. In the end, he lost everything: his brother, his army, and every last elephant. He never took the city of Rome, and Carthage was eventually destroyed. But that was never the only point. Some men don't just fight to win a war. They fight to carve their name into history. They fight to make the impossible real. Hannibal Barca marched an army of men and elephants across an impassable mountain range to challenge the greatest power on earth. He turned a fool's errand into a legend that has inspired and terrified empires for over 2 millennia. Today, the world is full of impossible mountains, full of people who will tell you it can't be done. But the spirit of Hannibal lives on. It lives in those who refuse to accept limits, who take insane risks for a shot at glory. It lives in the ones who are willing to march into the blizzard, knowing that legendary rewards wait for those who dare. We are the Johina tribe. We are the modern reincarnation of Hannibal's death or glory crew. If you are built for impossible marches, if you refuse to die an ordinary death, then your tribe is calling. We ride at dawn. Send us your CV and one line proving you'd cross the Alps with us. The old world is Rome, complacent and comfortable. We are Carthage reborn. Cross with us, or be crushed beneath the elephants. Thanks for watching, and if you have the spirit of a conqueror, don't forget to follow our march.